Donald Trump has appeared in court today with members of his family over the civil lawsuit into fraud at the Trump Organization. And before going into court, he said the judge is a rogue, the prosecutor is racist, and that it's a witch hunt and a travesty. And of course, those are all facts, perhaps colored by Trump's personal bias because they're literally going after him again. But it's true. Sorry, guys, I have the proof. You take a look at the judge ordering the Trump Organization to dissolve under the arguments that Trump lied about the value of his buildings, despite the fact that his buildings are comparable to other buildings nearby. You then take a look at how the judge said Mar-A-Lago is worth around 18 million or something to that effect, when Mar-A-Lago is 5 to 10 times bigger than surrounding properties worth more than $18 million. You know, I don't even know why Trump showed up. They issued a summary judgment ordering the dissolution of the Trump Organization and many companies. I don't understand the strategy of why you would walk into a room where you know the judge is going to bang the gavel and say nonsense. Perhaps. The only real reason is an appeal. If Trump doesn't show up, he's in default. You ain't appealing that. They're going to be like, you didn't even bother showing up to make an argument. Trump's going to have to go in, spend the money. This is the point. The point is, this summary judgment against the Trump Organization probably won't stand. I imagine that you're going to have an appellate court say outright, like, you can't do this to the lower judge. The lower judge doesn't care. And I think Trump is right. The judge is rogue, acting out of political interest. See, in New York, they don't care. Their strategy is defeat Trump by any means necessary. And the purpose of this, in reality, to drain Donald Trump of resources that he would need to run for president. Because here's how the game works, my friends. Is the game, several people announce they're running for president, typically two different parties, they'll hold their primaries, and then they'll say, may the best man win, and they make their arguments. No, the way the system works is powerful, massive multinational corporations allow resources to be spent on the candidate they like. But that means those candidates got to go and they got to give speeches in exchange for money. We heard recently that Michelle Obama got paid close to $1 million for giving a speech to the UN or something like that. I'm maybe getting the details wrong. I didn't follow that story too closely. But my response to that is, assuming it's true, Michelle Obama likely getting paid that sum of money means a run for office. This is how the game is played. You do not have your own resources to run. You go and you dance and audition for the massive multinational corporations. They then say, thanks for the speech. Here's the $1 million we promised to pay for a speech. Then when you announce you're running, you got $1 million from, say, insert financial institution. That is not a donation. It was payment for services rendered. But if you announce you're running for office and then they give you $1 million, now you got some election laws to answer some questions about. The reason why they're going after Trump's resources, Trump does not need your money to run for president. He's already famous. He spent a fraction of the money typical politicians spend when it came to 2016. And right now, they're going after his assets and his resources to stop him because the arguments they're making are nonsense. And I'll back it up. Here's a story from Raw Story, and this is a partisan left outlet I pulled up on purpose. They say, former President Donald Trump spent the minutes before his civil fraud trial in New York attacking the judge who will be ruling on the case. Let's get the text a little bigger there. Standing just outside the courtroom, Trump told reporters that New York Judge Arthur Engoron was a rogue judge. What, is it rouge? He's a rouge judge. Did Trump spell it wrong? Who supposedly unfairly undervalued Trump's properties in concluding that for years he had committed financial fraud. The former president also lashed out at New York Attorney General Letitia James, who brought the lawsuit against Trump. And James actually said, we've proved Trump committed fraud in our filing. No, they didn't. They made an argument and a judge banged the gavel. That's crazy. Proving beyond a reasonable doubt typically requires, like a hearing. Instead, they submitted an argument and the judge went, sounds good to me. Proof. They didn't. There's one question I have. One of the arguments they made against Trump is that he had a property that was 10,000 square feet that he listed as 30,000 square feet. The problem is typically these things, when you have like what would you call it? A ministerial error or administrative error. You typically, if you file a property as being larger than it is and you own like thousands of properties, they don't arrest you for it. They didn't arrest Trump, and they don't dissolve your company for it. They go to you and say, hey, it says 30,000 here. It's 10,000. You go, crap. Did I mix that one up? I'll fix it. How you prove fraud from that is insane. And the fact that the judge banged the gavel says a lot. He says, "We have a racist attorney general who is a horror show," Trump exclaimed. "She ran on the basis of she was going to get Trump before she even knew anything about me." Trump concluded his remarks by calling the lawsuit a scam and a sham. Trump last week exploded at Enron after the judge found him liable for committing business fraud as the head of the Trump organization. In addition to being found liable, Trump also faces indictments in 4 different jurisdictions on 91 felony counts of crimes ranging from unlawfully retaining top secret government documents, blah, 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 blah. Lies and slander and manipulations. Donald Trump attacks rogue judge. See here, rogue is spelled properly. I thought it was funny because I'm like, Trump spoke this. He didn't say rouge. They spelled rogue wrong. Raw story. Joke's on you. Trump railed against the rogue judge, and he is correct. But I want to jump to the part where he talks about the undervaluing of his businesses. I showed this last week, but I know not everybody watches every single video, and we need to prove the judge is lying about what Trump did. Trump, the frontrunner for the 2024 Republican presidential nomination, is accused by James of inflating the value of his assets by billions of dollars to secure better loan insurance terms. Weird. The lenders didn't seem to care. They got paid back on time. The businesses were operating and generating revenue at the agreed upon loan amounts. It's just, it's all very strange, isn't it? Apparently, Trump's team argued that with the summary judgment, they actually had lenders willing to testify that Trump did everything right. They had made money and were happy with the arrangements. Judge didn't care. There was no trial. Summary judgment, gavel banged. That's insane. So here we have some photos. They say Trump claimed the prosecution was being driven from Washington, saying it all comes down from the DOJ. They totally coordinated this in Washington. He claimed it's because of his performance in the polls in his bid to reclaim the White House. And let me just say, yeah, probably. You take a look over at Predict It. Predict It, the betting market, has Donald Trump at 36 cents to Joe Biden's 42 cents. And while that does not suggest a Donald Trump victory, I think there's a fair reason why Trump is polling, or I should say is in the prediction market under Joe Biden. And it is quite literally because the machine is lobbing everything they can at Trump. When you look at polling in aggregate, Donald Trump is winning. And it's going to be hard for Democrats. They don't have an existing Trump term to base their arguments off of. If Joe Biden was doing well, then they'd say, don't rock the boat. But things aren't going well. We got a war with seemingly no end in sight. Ukraine, once again, the U.S. is being dragged into never-ending wars of garbage. And you end up with Joe Biden being at fault. The botch Afghanistan pullout, a floundering economy, and things are not looking good for Joe Biden. It's shocking. If Joe Biden were to lose this one, it is rare that an incumbent does not win. But Donald Trump is not in office. And I think a lot of people are sick and tired of what the Democrats have been doing. And with what would you do? You describe as the work we do on these podcasts as leafleting, with more efforts being undertaken here. It's looking like we may actually win this one. And the reason why Predict It has Trump down is because I'd assume most people actually believe the machine will not let go. So there are more people who think the machine can't be beat. Perhaps. Take a look at this. Latest polls of October 1st, last night. Who's ahead? Well, Harris X has Trump against Biden, Trump winning by 3 points. What's this? Public policy polling has Biden up 4 in 2 different polls, and then a third poll has Biden up 3. How can this be? Oh, wait, it was sponsored by Save My Country Action Fund, a Democrat-aligned group. Okay. Well, look, I'm not going to say their polls are outright wrong. I think it's fair to say there are several polls that show Biden winning. The Economist and YouGov have Biden up 5 points and 1 point in 2 different polls. That's fair. I wouldn't immediately discount partisan sponsorships, but I would say the margin of error probably matters in this regard. I'm not going to use them to the same weight I would use any other polls. When you take a look at McLaughlin from September 22nd to 26, Trump is up 4 points, 5 points, 7 points, 4 points. Morning Consult has DeSantis down by 3, Biden beating DeSantis, and Trump up and Trump down by 1. It certainly can go both ways, but I believe you've got JL Partners with Trump up 1, and the ABC News Washington Post with Trump up 10 points and 9 points. So yes, my friends, they must lob every possible thing they have at Donald Trump because he is winning. They did it in 2020. They'll do it again in 2024. And I ain't talking about fraud. I'm talking about bending the rules to the best of their abilities to secure that victory. In 2020, what did we see? Universal mail-in voting, massive get-out-the-vote initiatives, which are totally legal, ballot harvesting, which, again, totally legal, but they pulled out all the stops. Utilizing the power of the lockdowns, no one had anywhere to go. They took away your movies, took away your sports, and people were bored at home, locked inside in cities. They could not go anywhere, and so they said, enough. The media told them it was Trump's fault. Trump's the one who was behind Fauci. Hey, that's true. And so what happened? People just said no. Now, of course, you have people like Ken Paxton arguing there was fraud and things like that. I just say, you know what, man, I don't think that matters. Trump only lost by 42,000 votes in 3 states, and he can win. And they know it. But I got to show you the proof. All right. What you're looking at is Zillow. I've shown this before. I'll show it again because it matters with the news coming out today about Trump's fraud lawsuit. The judge in New York said Mar-A-Lago is worth around $80 to $20 million or some number like that. Zillow currently lists Mar-A-Lago at $24.2 million. You want to know how that's complete and utter BS? Look at this tiny little property just above. If you go down 3 lots, the 4th lot at Kings Road at South Ocean Boulevard is a tiny fraction, perhaps 5% of the size of Mar-a-Lago for $25 million. Across the street, $30 million. Next door, on a tiny little lot, about maybe 5% the size of Mar-a-Lago, you have, actually that $25 million one's probably 2 or 3%. Right next to Mar-a-Lago, a $30 million house on no land. And Mar-a-Lago is beach-to-beach property. And the judge is trying to argue it's worthless and Trump lied about its value. This debunks the claims they've made. The Trump family, in my opinion, likely undervalued their properties. Here's the fascinating thing about the claims made by this judge. Typically, we heard from the left that Trump was undervaluing to avoid paying property taxes. That tends to be the action taken. You got a property that's worth $10 million. You don't want to come out and tell them it's worth $10 million because then you got to pay property tax on an assessment of that high. So what happens? Perhaps the game being played. For whatever reason, the tax assessor said Mar-a-Lago is like, I think the last tax assessment was $30 million. Trump values it much higher than that. There's a reason for this. Now, I certainly think it's probably should be assessed at a much higher rate than that, but that's between Trump and the Florida government. However, the business component of Mar-a-Lago matters. So the question is, what is the judge saying? Is the judge saying the hard real estate value? Well, I got to argue it's not the right amount. It should be way higher. This is where things get interesting. Perhaps the strategy of the judge is to claim it's only worth what the tax assessor said it was worth to force Donald Trump to make the argument that they privately value it high and publicly value it low. Thus, they then strike back saying, so you're talking about avoiding paying taxes. The only problem, that's a Florida state issue and not a federal issue. Or, I'm sorry, not a New York issue. That is, perhaps in New York, they may look at his properties and say, you overvalued them based on the taxes alone, and then try and get him on some state tax issue or something like that. I don't know. The only thing I see from all of this is drain Trump's resources. Every move made against him, perhaps he doesn't go to jail. I certainly think they'd like to put him there, but perhaps he doesn't. And the real strategy is just strap as many weights as possible to Trump's ankles so that he cannot run an effective campaign. That appears to be what is happening. And of course, ladies and gentlemen, I must give you Jamal Bowman. That's right, ladies and gentlemen. Democrat Rep. Jamal Bowman is ridiculed for claiming he pulled Congress fire alarm by accident during shutdown vote, as skeptics flag huge warning signs on handle and adjacent door. Now, how do you think Democrats are handling a dude who pulled a fire alarm? Whether unintentionally or not, pulling a fire alarm, it's a crime. And what did Jamal Bowman say? He said he pulled the fire alarm to open the door. So he admitted he had intent. He did the act. He is guilty. And what do we hear? Every shrieking, psychotic defense of what this guy did. Now, I know, I mentioned this earlier. The conspiracy theory is that this man, he was trying to shut down the vote, delay it, stall for time. And perhaps that's what happened. They caught him on camera doing it. He claims that he was just trying to open the door. Why? The door has a sign saying, here's how you open it. Instead, he pulled the physical fire alarm. My point in bringing up this is that, one, it's news and it just happened, but it shows you the difference. AOC leaps to his defense saying, oh, calm down. When they commit overt crimes, it is defense. They just did this. And when Donald Trump runs his business accordingly, he gets a summary judgment to shut down, and the judge lies about his property's value. Here's a story from the Daily Mail. Dem Rep Jamal Bowman is ridiculed for claiming he pulled Congress fire alarm by accident during shutdown. They say the incident, which was caught on camera and has since circulated far and wide, has sent Capitol lawmakers and their staffs into a tizzy as they semi-seriously try to understand why Bowman would think a clearly marked fire alarm would open a door. I'll tell you, he's lying. Because he's lying and was pulling the fire alarm for whatever reason. You decide what the reason is, but he's lying. Bowman put out a statement claiming that while in a rush to make it on time to vote for a stopgap spending bill that would keep the government open, he activated the fire alarm, mistakenly thinking it would open the door. Look at that photo of him pulling the fire. That's so weird. You can just push on the door. And the sign on the door says, if you hold the bar down, the door will open. Well, fellow left-wing New Yorker Rep AOC leapt to his defense. Republicans have been skeptical, with many noting the huge warning signs on the handle of the alarm and nearby door. This is not confusing at all, Justin Amash, a former anti-Trump Republican congressman, wrote on social media. There's a push bar on the door below the sign. Member of Congress see the signs all the time and know exactly what they mean. Bowman was trying to walk from the Cannon building to the Capitol building to vote. Unusually, the Cannon exit he went to wouldn't open and had this confusing sign on it. He thought it was saying you had to press the fire alarm to get out. This all makes sense. What am I missing? The sign says emergency exit only. Push until alarm sounds, 3 seconds. Door will unlock in 30 seconds. Fascinating. Now, why would they have an emergency exit on a building that can only be opened in this way? Because you need emergency exits in the case of a fire. And why do they have locks on them and why not just have the door be open? Because they don't want people to open it when they don't have security there. So he makes the argument, well, normally the door is open, yes. And when the door is open and people can come in and out, there's security there. And if there's no security there, they're going to lock it and not let you go through it. See how that works? Dude's obviously lying. Amash was responding to People's Policy Project founder Matt Bruning, who found the sign in front of the alarm confusing and believing Bowman felt he had to pull the alarm to exit, wondering, what am I missing? Journalist Patrick Casey added, Jamal Bowman pulling the fire alarm because he's incapable of reading this extremely common and not at all confusing sign is a million times funnier than him pulling it to stop the vote. Just incredible stuff. Another ex-user pointed out, his job is to read and vote on bills written in 1,000 times more confusing manner. Marjorie Taylor Greene believes Bowman is lying about the excuse. He knows exactly what pulling a fire alarm means. He did it while the Dems were trying to stall for time for the Senate, and Dem Whip had just called for a motion to adjourn. Both Greene and former President Trump have called for Bowman to be treated like the protesters who stormed the Capitol on January 6. His egregious act is covered on tape, a horrible display of nerve and criminality. It is a very dangerous obstruction of an official proceeding, the same as used against our J6 prisoners, Trump wrote on Truth Social. Actually, his act may have been worse. He must suffer their same fate. When will his trial begin? And this is the harsh reality, my friends, and I bring this up not to hash out a silly story, but to make the point. How many people went to prison for walking on the Capitol, which is normally open to the public? A lot. Hundreds. I'm not talking about rioters. The rioters should go to jail. They should get some time served. Maybe not 20 years. Maybe not 2 years. But the rioters who fought with cops, yeah, you go to jail for that. The people who were let in by the cops on the other side are facing jail time and being accused of trying to impede an official proceeding. And here's Jamal Bowman pulling the fire alarm for no real observable reason, claiming it was because he was trying to open a door. Okay, so he admitted to committing the crime. Pulling a fire alarm when there's no emergency. Yeah, you can't do it. Ignorance of the law is no excuse for breaking it. So they say, correct? You know what's going to happen? They're going to give him a slap on the wrist. But that's the penalty, right? In situations like this, what ends up happening? I'll tell you a story. In Chicago, if you want to go watch a Cubs game, you got to find parking. Parking is very hard to find. There are parking lots all over the place. You can pay and they'll bury your car and then you got to wait late to get out. Oh, it's a nightmare. And parking illegally, woof, that's $100 ticket. And so you get where this is going. People will park illegally, and they'll park in sometimes they'll double park, blocking cars in. They don't care because they know that if their car gets towed, all that it means is they hop a cab to the lot, pay $200 or whatever to get their car back. Most people will just park along near the crosswalk where it's a no parking zone, get a ticket. It's the cost of parking. If I got to pay $50 to park, I'll just pay a ticket. Why not? Now, you don't want the criminal infraction on your account or whatever, on your name, because they could eventually boot your car. That's typically if you don't pay it. The city probably doesn't care because they're like, we're getting money from this. It's basically paid parking at this point. When you are wealthy and powerful, the fine just means the cost of doing business. There are many companies that break the law and they'll get charged a couple $1 million and be like, but you break the law, you make 10 million and then you pay a $3 million fine. Government doesn't care. They got $3 million. You don't care. You made 7. Jamal Bowman is thinking the penalty for pulling the fire alarm is minimal. It is worth it in his mind to pull the alarm for whatever reason. And it's amazing, right? Opening a door is what he claims. BS, I don't buy it. Granted, I'm not saying I have proof he was trying to delay the vote, but that's what he did. And you have the people arguing that, yeah, well, he was in a different building. So what? There are certain members who are going to be like, oh, I was held up because the alarm went off. Oh, you have to wait. And that's how the game is played. Donald Trump is being eviscerated by Democrats. And Democrats are flagrantly and blatantly breaking the law in front of your face. How you doing? I always try to make sure I wrap this up by saying, my friends, it's a scared, cornered beast. That's what they're doing. They're losing. Someone who is winning doesn't need to pull a fire alarm, okay? They don't need to prosecute their political rivals. Only people who are in desperation and are losing do that. But losing doesn't mean lost. And aggressive tactics can work. My point is, we're winning. And we need to make sure we counter the illegal activities they're engaging in. And we uphold the law. But I guess we'll see how it all plays out when the election comes. And there's many variables in the year ahead of us. So if you think it's crazy now, I'll leave it there. Next segment's coming up at 4 p.m. on this channel. Thanks for hanging out, and I'll see you all then.